Hello, Facebook Live. Okay, we're doing bone broth tonight. So I'm going to show you how to make the bone broth, and then I'm also going to taste the bone broth. Not you guys, but everybody else. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the health benefits of bone broth. The reason we go back to bone broth in the first place is because we're not getting the necessary nutrients from our food anymore. We're not getting the collagen. We're not getting the nutrients that we used to get from our food. So by boiling the bones and by cooking down the bones, you're getting all the marrow and the collagen and the gelatin and all these amazing, amazing things that help with your joints and your functioning of your digestive system. It's going to seal the lining of your digestive system. And all of these things that we take, like glucosamine and chondroitin and all this stuff that we think, oh, we're exercising, so we need this lubricant for our joints. What we really need is that good collagen and the good gelatin, and the best way to get that is bones. So that's why we make bone broth. That's the reason that we make bone broth. If you have any other symptoms like gas pains, IBS, colitis, any of those digestional problems, the big thing that we got to work on is resealing the gut lining. And one of the ways I like to do that, not just cut out the bad foods like I do with my Whole30 group and do an elimination type diet, but also add in things that are super beneficial and help that gut lining heal. And it's kind of like you're working on both ends. You're stopping the attack and you're healing on the back end too. So what I like to do with bone broth, and there's a lot of different ways to make it. You can make it on the stovetop and boil it and boil the crap out of the bones, and then all this gunk comes to the surface and you scrape that off and then boil it some more and then keep the lid kind of on it and boil and go all day. But for me, it just isn't something that I'm going to do. It's not realistic for me because I'm not going to sit at my house all day long and watch a pot of anything boil. I'm just not going to do it. So I like to use the crock pot method, and I'll put it in my crock pot, put it on low, and do it for at least 2 days, so 24 to 48 hours. Anything less than that, and you're getting bone-flavored soup, and ugh. So what you want to end up seeing, I'll show you with my bones that I've got here, because I made a batch for you guys to try, so that you could get, not just an understanding of how to do it, but really what you're getting out of it, and what it tastes like. So here's a piece of the bone. Ooh, it's breaking, I can't even get it out. So here's a piece of the bone.
That's chicken or beef?
Chicken bones,
okay.
Good question. And it's so fragile now that it just completely melts into nothing. So that's what you're getting at. And like Rachel asked earlier, why, about reusing the bones and not wasting the bones, is if they don't do this, if you're not getting this mush from them, they're not done yet and they can keep going. So you can take out the liquid that's in there, put in new fresh liquid, and keep going until you get this, until there's nothing left of it. I also like to use this after it's all done and grind it all up. I actually use my immersion blender in there with whatever liquid's left at the bottom after I've taken all my bone broth out. And I blend it all up and I put it out on the plants because there's still some marrow left in there. There's still some calcium from the bones. There's still good stuff. So I'll use it for something else. It's totally soft powder. But if you'll notice on this one, this is kind of a thicker bone. It's not quite mush yet. It's still pretty hard. I can't pinch it. I could probably break it. But it's not quite done yet. So I'm going to throw it back in with a new pot because it's not done. I can still use it. Why waste it? Okay, so what I like to do is you got to do this with organic chicken or organic beef or any kind of bone that you decide to use. It's got to be organic. You don't want to be boiling a bunch of pesticides, a bunch of toxins, soy, corn, any of that. So it's got to be an all organic piece of meat. You can do it with chicken, you can do it with beef, you can do it with fish. If you do fish, you got to do the fish heads, and I'm just not there yet. I'm not at that, I'm not that hardcore yet. And I'm not exactly sure that I would care for the fishy smell in my house yet anyways. If you do beef bones, you cook the bones in the oven for a little bit, 400 degrees for about 15 minutes, and that helps to melt that bone marrow, and you get this really great level of fat, and that fat is called tallow, beef tallow, and you pour all that good stuff in, and that's going to mix into the bone broth. I personally am not a huge fan of the taste of beef bone broth. I prefer the chicken bone broth. It tastes to me like chicken soup. So I'm comfortable drinking that and having that all day or having that with my soup. If I have beef bones, or if I found a good deal on beef bones, they're still just as good for you. You're still going to get all that good gelatin, all that good collagen in the marrow from the bones. Even more so because the marrow bones for beef are this like round circular bone, and they have this marrow through the middle of it. And when you're done with the bones, you pull the bone out and tap that marrow in and mix it in, and the marrow, all that good stuff goes in. I remember my not my grandmother, but my mom's best friend growing up, she would eat, like, we would have to give her the bones. Like, we would finish our dinner, and she's like, give me all your bones. And so we would give her the bones, and she'd crack them open, and she'd scrape out the marrow. And I thought this woman was a freaking nut. And now I'm going over to this restaurant in Old Town, and they charge you like $25 for beef marrow. You know, like a piece of beef bone that they cooked the marrow, and you go scrape it out. Now not only are we, you know, not wasting, we're charging for it. So, so good stuff. I don't prefer the flavor. So if I am going to use beef bones, or if I did find a good deal on beef bones, I do exactly the same thing I'm going to show you today, but I use it for soups, and I'll use it as like my stock for anything that needs stock. So anytime I'm using, like making a stir fry, it needs 2 tablespoons of stock. Or if I'm making, you know, anything. Even if I make rice, which I don't typically eat a lot of white rice, but if I make rice, I will soak the rice for a couple of hours before I do it, and then I make my rice with bone broth, not water. So then I'm really getting the nutrients from the bone broth and not hurting myself with eating the grains. So if I really am craving a big bowl of rice or a little bit of white rice with my meal, I'll cook it with the bone broth. And it absorbs just the way any other would, but you don't have to add any seasoning to your rice. It's going to taste super amazing, be fluffy and delicious, and you've got that protective layer with the collagen and the gelatin from the bone broth. So really good stuff. Okay, so what I like to do, like I said, I do the all organic chickens, and I typically roast 1 chicken a week. It's like part of our weekly meal. I'll get a chicken, I'll roast it. That's 1 carcass isn't necessarily enough to make bone broth. You want probably 1.5, or like save some of the parts. So what I do is I get a bag and keep it in my deep freezer, and I just collect the bones. And when I get a bag full like this, then I know I can make bone broth. And luckily for you guys, I had already had 2 bags full, and I didn't even realize because I still had a stockpile of bone broth. So this was a perfect time for me to make it. I also keep the necks. The necks have a lot of gelatin, a lot of collagen in it. So the neck meat, I'll cut the neck out. I like to make spatchcock chicken, where you cut the neck, break the bones, and lay it flat so that all the pieces are nice and crispy. And I roast the neck with it, and then I'll put the neck in the freezer and save that for later. I know. And any chicken that's left on the bone, I just save that as well. So there's a little bit of chicken left. That's just going to be more flavor.
Do you remove the skin?
Nope, I keep the skin. Keep the skin, good fat, good everything. So this is like a culmination of necks, backs, you know, skin, carcass, the whole 9 yards. And I actually, even with like Thanksgiving, I bought a $75 turkey, and I saved everything from that, and to make more broth. Okay, then because you're not actually going to eat anything that's in the broth except for the broth, you can throw everything in with the skins on. So the onions, thank you. Onions go in with the skin on, and I just do 1 onion. Celery, I don't even bother doing anything to it except washing it so there's no dirt. A little bit of celery. Carrots, same thing. I don't trim them, I don't cut them. I just wash them, make sure, again, no dirt on there. And then the garlic cloves, I just throw them in whole. Because by 48 hours of cooking a garlic clove, this is going to basically disintegrate, and it's just flavor. And then I fill it with filtered water, and I put salt and peppercorns in it. So sea salt, I love sea salt, and then the peppercorns whole. I don't crush the pepper, I leave the peppercorns whole, and then when I strain it, the peppercorns come out, and I got the flavor without adding any extra pepper. Now I've got a really good seasoned broth, and I don't have to season other things as much. So when I'm making the soup, it needs less salt. If I'm making the rice, it doesn't need any seasoning. If I'm making other things with it, I can cut back on some of the other seasonings, because I've got this really rich, flavorful broth. You guys ready to try it? I've been talking about it for so long. Okay, any questions about this?
So this is cooked meat. Can you, like when you go to the butcher and you ask for bones?
Yeah.
I think it's raw, right?
Yeah.
And so you can either...
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, can you use raw bones? Absolutely. You don't have to have them cooked. I typically also buy chicken feet. So gross. They look like feet. They look like feet. I put them at the bottom so I don't have to look at them because it seriously grosses me out. But there's so much gelatin in the feet. When I do the feet, when I use the feet in the broth, I know. And it took me like a year probably to get that hardcore. What's that? Yeah, any of the like extra parts. When I do the feet and I do the bone broth, I take this out when it's cooled down. I put it into plastic containers and I keep it in my freezer. But I do typically keep one in the fridge. By the next day, the ones that had the feet, it's so gelatinous that I have to use a spoon to scrape out the serving amount. So it's just basically Jell-O, like a, bone broth Jell-O. And you're getting so much good stuff from it, and the flavor is all there. So yeah, it's kind of weird, and it's kind of like, not something you're used to, or not something that you're typically doing, but the health benefits are just like off the chart. It seems, once you try it tonight, you'll see, and even if you can't, it took me a little while to be able to drink it all the time, but I would make soups with it, and I make a soup every week when I get my farm box. I get my farm box on Tuesdays. We clean out the fridge, my sister and I clean out the fridge, and we make soup with whatever was getting too soft, and then that way nothing gets stuffed in the back of the fridge and then forgotten about. So we usually have chard, or this week we did chard, cabbage, butternut squash. We had some beef. We used the rest of the chicken broth that we had in the freezer, and just whatever we had. Some fresh parsley, all the fresh veggies that were in the fridge, carrots, celery, onion, and made a great soup with it. So that's that was my introduction to bone broth. When I couldn't do it, just like a cup of bone broth, I would make the soups, and I made a soup every week. And when we had, which we never do have extra, I actually have to make extra and then hoard it and put it in the freezer so that I can have soup at some other time when I'm not feeling good enough to make something myself. When you're sick and you want soup, the last thing you want to do is make yourself soup, right? So if it's already done, it's already there for you. It's way nice. So I'll make a big batch, freeze part of it, eat some of it for the week, and I love to eat soup for breakfast. So that's another reason I love the soup so much. Other questions?
So how do you actually strain it?
I'm going to show you.
Okay.
I'm going to show you how to do that, but I typically will just use, here we go. I'll just use the ladle, thank you, and just ladle out all of the stuff until I've got just the bones and a little bit of the liquid left, and then that's the stuff I use to emulsify the liquid, and then I'll put it out on the plants. So if you need to strain it, if you want to strain it all the way out, I'll use a colander. That pretty much catches everything. Sometimes it lets the peppercorns through, but that's okay. I'll freeze it with the peppercorns in it.
And I've heard of people drinking, just like you said, a cup of bone broth. Is
Yeah.
it cold or hot? Or what are we talking?
It's warm. It's like when you're drinking a cup of bone broth, you want it to be warm. I like to tell people it's like getting a warm hug in the morning or the afternoon or in the evening.
I do it hot, like a cup
Yeah.
of soup. Okay.
Yeah, if you're drinking.
That's what I pretend, it's
Yeah.
soup.
Yeah. Like you're drinking a soup out of a thermos, or I'll pour it into a mug. You'll have a sip out of a warm bone broth out of a mug, and it makes it. I don't know. Maybe you're tricking yourself enough to feel like this is a cup of tea that is so far beneficial to me that it's almost a meal.
And like Sharissa said, if it's done really well, it gets super gelatinous, and so you can't drink it cold anyways.
No.
Because it's
Right.
solid.
That's
So you
what
have to
I was kind of
heat
like.
it.
Yeah.
You said something about gelatinous, I was like, oh no.
No. When it's warm, it's totally broth. It's liquid. When it gets cold, it can solidify, and then you heat it up to get it back to that temperature again, or get it back to that consistency again. Yeah. Good question. Anything else? Yeah.
Have you experimented with other stuff to put in there, like lemongrass or some other just?
Yeah, absolutely. I've put tons of times. I'll just I have extra herbs in the fridge and I'll throw it in. It just adds another layer of flavor to it. My favorite combination is still just your classic, what you'd make for chicken noodle soup. That's my go-to because it feels comforting. It feels familiar. Yeah. But yeah, you could do anything with it.
So what's the benefit of homemade versus buying a canister of organic chicken broth?
It's a really good question. Chicken broth is boiled chicken. Bone broth is bones boiled for a minimum of 24 hours. But store-bought and the cans or the bottles of it, if it says bone broth, they can go less than 24 hours. they can dilute it. So they'll make the bone broth and then put water in it to make it, you know, more, they have more in it so that it looks like there's more and you're paying more for it. And the cost difference is astronomical. This is like my leftover bones, a couple of vegetables, maybe cost me $3 plus, you know, the water to make a huge batch. This will make me like 3 quarts versus buying a little container in the store for like $3 or $4. If you get real good high quality bone broth, it's $12 for this much.
Yeah, I saw a jar of roots the other day that did look really good. Like it
Yeah.
did look firm, but it was like over $10 for
Yeah.
a jar.
And that would last you like, it wouldn't even do a soup.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't even do, you know, if you were drinking it for health benefits to reseal the gut lining, if you were dealing with digestional problems or hormone regulation or any of those things, that all starts with our gut. If you're doing it for health reasons, you're going to be going through something like that every 2 days. So that's, you know, a huge, huge cost difference. And for something like putting it in your crock pot, your leftover scraps from your meal that you were just going to throw away, and a little bit of water and letting it go for 3 days or 2 days, you're not even thinking about it. And sometimes I'll put it in the garage because I don't like to smell it all day. And then, you know, I just set it and forget it. Set a timer on my phone for 2 days later and say like, okay, my bone broth is ready. I strain it and I've got bone broth in the freezer. And it took very, very little effort from me. So there's a good cost difference as well as, you know, just overall quality. You know exactly what you're getting when you made it yourself.
I saw at Sprouts, they have a powdered bone broth.
Yeah, and Dr. Axe makes the powdered bone broth. He basically does this and then dries it out. I don't know the difference in the health benefits of it. It's much more concentrated, so it's possible that you get more benefit from it. It's possible that you don't get any benefit from it. I don't really know how it works. It's very, very new. Within the last like 1 year, powdered bone broth has become a thing. And I think it's like a convenience factor. People think, oh, I'm just going to throw my bone broth in. I would rather, if you don't want to do any bone broth at all, that you go on a collagen type powder. So there's Great Lakes and Vital Proteins makes a powdered collagen, and it's the same type of thing, but it's just the collagen or just the gelatin. So you're not getting anything else from it, and it has no taste, no flavor, doesn't change the consistency of the drink you're using, and I do both. I do, Des, can you grab my Great Lakes collagen? I use Great Lakes collagen because it's a little less expensive, and it's also grass-fed, so it's perfectly fine. It's $17 on Amazon, and I put 2 tablespoons in my tea every day. So I'm getting the collagen benefit, but I also do the bone broth. I don't do bone broth every day anymore. I don't need to. And the collagen is just helping to keep that lining safe. So if you're going to do a powdered anything, I would prefer or recommend that you do a powdered collagen or a powdered gelatin. We also have the same brand in gelatin, and you can make your own gummies. You can make, you know, that's going to make Jello. That's going to make gelatin. This isn't going to change the consistency. Yeah.
Collagen supposed to be good for your face too.
It's good for everything. So your skin, your epithelial layer, is the same on the outside as it is on the inside. Just the outside is dry, the inside is wet. So if we have any problems skin related, we're having problems digestion or intestine related, same thing. It's going to help on both ends. So it's the bonus to doing collagen is you get hair, skin, and nails. The benefit, in my opinion, is digestion. It's so important to get this fixed, and when this is fixed, everything else regulates. Your hormones will be balanced, your skin will be nice, your hair will be nice, your nails will grow and be strong. All of those things are a bonus for the real benefit, which is healing the gut. Yeah. Good. Other questions?
I have another question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the beef broth or I know you said you don't do that a lot, but can you only use the long bones or I mean, I don't eat a lot of meat, so I don't
Good question.
But like, I mean, if I was going to go to like, you know, Whole Foods and say, what do you got in terms of the bones?
Yeah,
Tell me what
so
you got. What
if
would
it's
you-
beef, if you're asking for beef bones, they're called marrow bones, and
Oh, okay.
that's what the butchers
Okay.
have. And
Okay.
they'll cut them for you. They're actually these like big long bones, and
Right.
they cut them for you
Right.
so that it's easy for you to cook and it's easy for you to put them in your pots and stuff like that.
Okay, cool.
So if you're gonna do beef, you ask for marrow bones
Okay.
from the butcher, and then you'll sound like an old pro. Can I get some marrow bones and some chicken feet?
Maybe not quite.
But that's what
Maybe
you
I'll
ask.
get there.
You'll get there. It's something that I like, okay, I'm just gonna try this. I got, 40 chicken feet. and kept them in the freezer. Every time I saw them in the freezer, totally made me gag. And I put them underneath the carcass so that I couldn't see it because it totally grosses me out. They look like feet. They have nails. I couldn't do it.
It doesn't help that when she pulled it out, I picked it up and was like, ooh.
Yeah, no, I'm not a feet fan, but the benefit for me was I'm gonna get the extra collagen. It's gonna help, and for me it was, and I did anything I could to get my life back. So if you're in the trenches and you're feeling like I've got to figure out how to feel better, you would be surprised at things that you do. Other questions? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off and let you try it.